All right, everyone. Ready for a deep dive? We're talking jack-o'-lanterns. Yeah, you heard right. Might seem like all candy corn and pumpkin spice lattes, but trust me, there's more to these glowing grins than meets the eye.
It's funny, isn't it, how something so playful, so nostalgic, can also have these kind of dark, mysterious roots.
Right. I mean, we've all heard the story, Stingy Jack and all that, but have you ever, really thought about it? I mean, really thought about it, what it all means?
It's easy to just brush it off as a spooky story for kids, but there's this whole connection to ancient Celtic traditions, beliefs about the spirit world if you dig a little deeper.
Hmm.
Think about those carved turnips. Like, before pumpkins, that was a thing.
Turnips, really?
Oh, yeah. And it was all about warding off evil spirits during Samhain.
Samhain.
Yeah, as this whole festival marked the end of harvest season, the beginning of winter, a time when, well, let's just say the veil between the worlds was a little thin.
Okay, getting goosebumps now, so kind of like our Halloween.
Exactly. And that's where Stingy Jack comes in. See, he tricks the devil.
Mhm.
Not once, but twice.
Whoa, bold move. The devil does not like to be tricked.
Nope, not one bit. And it
Okay.
backfires.
Oh.
Big time. When Jack finally kicks the bucket, he can't get into heaven. And hell, forget about it. He's stuck wandering the earth with just this, like, burning coal inside a hollowed-out turnip to light his way.
So that's where jack-o'-lanterns come from. That image is both kind of cool and seriously creepy.
And you can see how that image, that flickering light trapped inside something carved out, it would stick around, evolve. When those traditions crossed the Atlantic, found the pumpkin, well, the rest is history.
Wow. It's amazing how these old stories stick with us, you know? They find a way to change, to be reborn. But here's the thing. What if, and stay with me here, what if some of that original spooky energy, it's still attached, like it kind of rubbed off on the tradition itself? And speaking of spooky energy, we dug up some stories about a particular pumpkin patch, a place where those discarded jack-o'-lanterns, those tossed-aside grins, well, their spirits might not be too happy about being thrown out with the Halloween candy wrappers.
See, we're not talking about your average pumpkin patch here. Local legend says this is where the discarded jack-o'-lanterns go, the ones nobody wants after Halloween. Their final resting place, you could say.
You're saying there's like a pumpkin graveyard out there,
Huh.
haunted by Halloween rejects. Okay, that's both hilarious and kind of creepy.
Right, and the story goes, on Halloween night, when the veil's at its thinnest, those spirits get restless. Almost like they're looking for something.
For a comeback, a new pumpkin ready to be carved.
Exactly. Imagine, like, a spooky version of musical chairs. But instead of chairs, it's pumpkins. And the music stopping? Well, that's midnight hitting, Halloween night.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. So is this like just a story, a campfire tale, or are there people who actually claim to have seen something? Because honestly, I kind of want to hear those stories, even if they freak me out.
Well, let's just say there are enough whispers, enough stories going around. You gotta wonder. Unexplained lights, eerie sounds, people getting that feeling, like they're being watched.
Classic haunted vibes. But it's more than that, right? You were saying something about firsthand accounts, people actually seeing things they couldn't explain.
Oh, yeah. There's this one story. This farmer in New England, he swore up and down that he saw the pumpkins in his field moving on their own. Full moon, nobody around. Apparently, the guy was so freaked out, never carved another pumpkin again.
Okay, that's just... What could he have even seen? It's like those pumpkins, they had a mind of their own.
Right. It makes you think, doesn't it? And then there are the stories about people trying to spend the night in the patch, for kicks. They never say much afterwards. But you can tell they saw something. Or at least they think they did.
It's the not knowing, isn't it, that just gets under your skin. Like when someone tells you not to worry, but they look a little too shifty when they say it. Makes you wonder if there's something to those old beliefs about Halloween, about the veil being thin, and maybe those jack-o'-lanterns, maybe those carved out faces with those flickering lights. Maybe they're like a bridge between the worlds.
Wow. Now that's a thought. We carve these faces, these expressions, put a light inside, almost like we're inviting something in or revealing something that was already there. Intentionally or not, who knows?
Okay, now you've got me thinking. But this isn't just about spooky stories from way back when, is it? People talk about weird pumpkin stuff online all the time, especially this time of year.
Exactly. It's not just folklore anymore. It's happening now, in our own time. We actually asked our listeners to share their own weird pumpkin encounters. And let me tell you, some of them, They're pretty out there.
Oh, yeah, the listener stories. We have to get to those. Some of them were wild. That one from the UK, right? Talking about their jack-o'-lantern changing expressions overnight.
Oh, I know, right? Like, imagine seeing that. What would you even think?
Talk about creepy. But we also had that other one from the US. That was even stranger, even harder to explain.
Oh, absolutely.
Ah,
This listener found weird symbols carved into their pumpkin the day after Halloween. Almost like while they were sleeping, something or someone decided to get a little creative.
you know what they say. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. Or in this case, out to carve your pumpkins. But really, it just goes to show you, this whole jack-o'-lantern thing, it's more than just a decoration. It's something older, deeper, don't you think? It's like we're so used to them, just see them as decorations. But maybe there's something on the other side that sees it differently, sees us differently.
It really makes you think about this symbolism, right? Even if we don't realize it. Like, we hollow them out, carve a face, put a light inside.
Right, right. And most people probably aren't thinking about ancient rituals while they're doing it.
Nope. They just want to make a cool jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Like, we've taken something ancient and mysterious, something that used to freak people out.
And made it a craft project.
Exactly. Not there's anything wrong with that, of course. But it makes you wonder, are we messing with forces we don't understand?
Okay, now you're going to have to explain that. What do you mean messing with forces?
Well, there's this whole concept, right? Sympathetic magic.
Sympathetic magic. Go on.
Basically, the idea is like affects like. You create an image, you perform an action, and it can actually have an effect on the real world. So think about it. When we carve those scary faces into pumpkins, are we inviting those energies into our lives?
Whoa, okay, that's a thought. Like maybe we should be paying more attention to the faces we're carving.
Right. What kind of energy are we putting out there? What are we inviting in? Or revealing, maybe. It's something to think about next time you light your jack-o'-lantern, that's for sure.
Okay, you've officially given me chills. And I'm going to be looking at my jack-o'-lantern a little differently this year.
Good. A little mystery never hurt anyone.
That's one way to put it. Well, I think we've gone about as deep as we can go on this one. Jack-o'-lanterns, everyone. They're more than meets the eye.
Until next time, remember, sometimes the most lighthearted traditions have the deepest roots. And happiest of Halloweens to you all.
Okay, so are you ready to dive into something we all know and love? Jack-o'-lanterns.
Always up for a good jack-o'-lantern chat, especially when it involves spooky history.
Right. We're looking at this mystery stories stripped, the episode all about their folklore. And you'd think we know everything, but
Trust me, there's a lot more to these grinning pumpkins than meets the eye. It's fascinating how they connect to, like, ancient anxieties about life, death.
yeah, life, death, the whole spirit world thing. It's
Oh,
like
right.
we carve them for fun now, but
It wasn't always about the fun, was it?
no, not at all. They were originally called Lanterns of the Dead, which, okay, spooky name.
But not just a name. It reflects a real purpose in those old Celtic traditions.
And not just Celtic, right? We're talking way back over 2,000 years ago.
During the Festival of Samhain.
Okay, so paint a picture for us what was going on back then.
Imagine this. It's October 31st.
Sounds familiar already.
Right. But the veil between the worlds is at its thinnest. Spirits are roaming free, and it's the night the Celts celebrated Samhain. Oh, yeah, and they weren't exactly carving pumpkins like we do.
What then? What did they carve?
Turnips.
Turnips. Huh.
Right.
Okay, not as aesthetically pleasing, I'll grant you that. But I get it, you use what you've got. But these carved turnips, they weren't just decorations, were they?
No way. They were for protection. Can you imagine? Believing that these carved up turnips, especially with those grotesque faces, placed near your home.
Kept the evil spirits away.
Exactly. Like a, hey, spirits, nothing to see here, move along, but with root vegetables.
That's kind of hilarious when you think about it. Beware the turnip of doom. But the script also mentions something about these lanterns being used to guide spirits too, to help them find peace.
Right. It was about helping guide the spirits of the dead, making sure they found their final resting place.
So they didn't linger.
Exactly. It's really a different way of thinking about death and the supernatural, you know.
It really is. For them, this wasn't just a fun holiday. It was a time when that line between our world and the spirit world was super thin. Speaking of spirits, the script mentions someone called Stingy Jack. Who was this guy?
Ah, Stingy Jack. He's kind of the link between all this carved gourd business and Halloween as we know it.
Really?
Yeah, he was this Irish trickster, a guy who managed to outsmart the devil himself. Not once,
No.
but twice.
Okay, once is impressive, but twice. That's next level. How do you even do that?
Well, it's a whole thing, different versions and all that. But basically, Jack tricked the devil into promising not to take his soul,
Sounds like a good deal.
right? But then Jack died. And of course, his, shall we say, lifestyle choices.
His less than angelic resume.
Well, let's just say heaven wasn't exactly thrilled to have him.
But the devil couldn't take him either, right? Because of the deal.
Exactly. He was stuck.
Stuck between heaven and hell. Talk about a rock and a hard place. So what happened? Did he just wander aimlessly forever?
Well, not exactly aimlessly. The devil, maybe out of pity, maybe just to get rid of him, gave Jack a single burning coal, to light his way. And as the legend goes, Jack placed that ember inside a hollowed-out turnip, maybe when he carved earlier, who knows?
To ward off those other spirits.
You got it. And that, my friend, is how the first jack-o'-lantern was born.
Wow. Talk about an origin story. So Stingy Jack, forever roaming the earth with his glowing turnip, lighting his way. It's kind of a sad story when you think about it.
It is kind of melancholy.
It makes you wonder if those spooky stories about wandering lights in the night might be from people seeing these lanterns, right? Maybe attributing those flickering lights to Stingy Jack passing through.
Right. Imagine walking on a foggy night and seeing that. You'd think it was Stingy Jack, too. Speaking of which, you mentioned Mystery Stories as a podcast. Did their script have anything about what Stingy Jack might say if we could hear him?
Now that you mention it, they did. But before we get into that, I think we have to address the elephant, or rather the pumpkin in the room.
Yes, the pumpkin.
We've got turnips, we've got spooky stories, we've even got the devil himself, but how do pumpkins fit into all of this?
That, my friend, is where our journey takes us across the Atlantic to America.
So we're picturing those spooky glowing turnips, right? But how did we get from that to the pumpkins we carve today?
Well, it's a classic story of, adaptation. Cultures blend, things change. When those traditions came over to America with Irish and Scottish immigrants in the 19th century,
They brought their turnips,
they
right?
tried to. But turnips weren't as common here. They needed a substitute.
Something more American.
Exactly. And they found that pumpkins, a native plant,
Abundant.
were larger, easier to carve, and already associated with the harvest season.
Talk about a match made in, well, if not heaven, then at least Halloween heaven. It wasn't just about convenience, though, was it? It must have tied into something about American culture, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Pumpkins were already linked to all those harvest festivals, so they just fit right into the whole American idea of fall celebrations, plus those big orange canvases.
Perfect for a spooky face.
Exactly. It's a great example of how traditions blend and change when they cross borders,
It really is. It makes you wonder what other traditions have transformed over time, taking on new meanings. But back to our spooky script, it wasn't all just fun and games with these jack-o'-lanterns, was it? I mean, this was still rooted in some pretty serious beliefs about the afterlife.
Oh, absolutely. The script reminds us that these flickering faces, they weren't always about festive fun. They were often placed at grave sites, even along the paths to cemeteries in some of those older European traditions.
Really? Wow. So they were lighting the way for the departed.
Exactly. Guiding lost souls, making sure they found their final rest, It was also a way of, well, you could say, protecting the living, too. Preventing those spirits from coming back to haunt them.
So even in death, there was the sense of needing guidance, a light in the darkness. It's a theme that we still see today, in a way.
Don't we? Even if we don't place jack-o'-lanterns on graves anymore, we put them on our doorsteps, almost like a symbolic barrier.
Between us and the unknown.
Exactly. It's fascinating how those ancient anxieties, about what might be out there, still influence our traditions, even in these subtle ways.
It's true. And even that tradition of leaving treats out for spirits, that's evolved into leaving candy out for trick-or-treaters. It's incredible how these things connect. But the script didn't just stop at history, did it?
You're remembering right. Mystery stories took a turn towards the modern day, specifically how the jack-o'-lantern shows up in popular culture.
Yeah. Okay, now we're talking. Everyone knows a good horror movie has to have a jack-o'-lantern in there somewhere. But this script mentioned one movie in particular, right?
You're thinking of Halloween, of course.
Of course.
And that iconic villain, Michael Myers. That blank, expressionless mask.
Chilling.
Right? It's like the jack-o'-lantern went from this symbol of protection to something eerie, unsettling, even threatening.
Wow. Yeah, it's like we've come full circle. We started with warding off evil, and now the jack-o'-lantern has become a symbol of it.
It's really quite a thought when you think about it, isn't it? How this simple tradition, something that came from wanting to understand that boundary between life and death, still has such a hold on us. The jack-o'-lantern is more than just a decoration. It's like this cultural artifact. It says something about us, about our history, our psychology.
And it's something millions of people around the world take part in
Hmm.
every year without even realizing the history behind it. It's
Yeah.
like we're tapping into this collective memory by carving those pumpkins.
Maybe we are. Every time we carve one, we're part of a ritual that goes back generations to a time when that line between our world and the spirit world, it wasn't so solid.
Yeah, it's a powerful thought. But as much as I love the history, the symbolism, there's also something to be said for the joy of it, right? Carving a pumpkin. It's creative, messy, and then you light it up at night.
Oh, absolutely. That playfulness is important too.
Mm,
We can face the unknown and still find joy, creativity, wonder.
well said. But speaking of wonder, we can't forget about that eerie little thought that Mystery Stories script left us with.
Ah, yes. As you carve your jack-o'-lantern this Halloween, remember, you're not just creating a decoration, you're crafting a lantern of the dead.
Ooh, okay. That sends chills down my spine. Especially the part where they asked if what we create will protect you from what lingers in the shadows or attract something more. Do you think our jack-o'-lanterns could have a will of their own? Could they be more than just, I don't know, pumpkins?
It's a question, isn't it? And it taps into those anxieties we've been talking about, those fears of what might be hiding just out of sight.
It's like by carving them, we're putting a bit of, I don't know, something else into them. And that something could be good or bad. It's creepy, but cool.
Hmm.
What do you think those jack-o'-lanterns would tell us if they could talk based on this Mystery Stories episode?
That's what's so great about it. Every single grin, every face, it's like a story waiting to happen. Are they keeping the darkness away, or are they inviting it closer? The episode played with that, didn't it?
Totally. It reminds me of like how people used to see faces in the moon and make up stories about them. And now we're making the faces, putting our own fears and hopes onto these pumpkins. We've gone from finding meaning in nature to creating our own.
And when we put those candles in and those spooky shadows are on the wall, it's like we're part of something that goes back centuries. Think about it, we might carve with different tools, but that idea of taking something natural and making it into something new, something that shows how we feel about the unknown, that's always been there.
It makes you realize Halloween is more than just dressing up and getting candy. It's about those old traditions, those basic fears, those things we're drawn to, even if they scare us a little. It's like the jack-o'-lantern is a symbol of all that, proof that some things never really go away, like our fascination with what's out there beyond what we can see.
Exactly. That's what makes the jack-o'-lantern so interesting. Fun and spooky, old and new, all at the same time. It shows that even now, we haven't forgotten those old fears and stories.
It's like that little flame inside. It's a part of that ancient knowledge, that feeling that there's more to the world than what we see every day. So if you had to sum up the whole jack-o'-lantern journey, from those Celtic days to our celebrations now, what would you say?
It's proof that traditions, stories, even our own imaginations, they all have power. It started with wanting to understand life and death, and it's still fascinating us today, making us creative, making us ask questions. So this year, when you're carving, think about that journey, that link to the past. You might even catch yourself wondering, what would my jack-o'-lantern say if it could?
What a great way to end this. It shows that the best stories are often right in front of us, just waiting to be discovered. Thanks for exploring the world of jack-o'-lanterns with us.
It was my pleasure.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. And since it's that spooky time of year again, well, we love a good origin story. So we thought we'd take a deep dive into the jack-o'-lantern. I mean, you probably think you know everything about them, right? Those grinning gourds on everyone's doorstep. But trust me, there's a whole lot more to those jack-o'-lanterns than meets the eye. Like, did you know that there are actually documented cases of cursed pumpkins? We're talking whispers of bad luck, spooky stories, and even a whole TikTok challenge about them that's putting a modern twist on those old beliefs. And to help us get to the bottom of all of this, we have our expert on folklore and cultural traditions. So, what's the real story behind these decorations? I mean, they seem pretty innocent when you see them at the grocery store, right?
Well, you'd be surprised. It's actually pretty fascinating how a tradition that was originally meant to ward off evil spirits somehow became all caught up in stories about curses and hauntings. And it all starts with a pretty mischievous little story, the legend of Stingy Jack.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Stingy Jack. I've never heard of him.
Yeah, most people haven't. But this legend is like the heart of the jack-o'-lantern. Okay, so picture this. It's centuries ago, back in Ireland. A land just full of folklore and superstition.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And Stingy Jack was this trickster, notorious for being, well, stingy, but also incredibly cunning. Like he could outsmart anyone, even, get this, the devil himself.
Hold on, he tricked the devil? Seriously?
Not just once, but twice. The story goes that Jack tricked the devil into promising that he wouldn't come for his soul when he died. Problem was, when Jack actually kicked the bucket, this deal totally backfired.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, because of all his tricking and mischief, Jack was denied entry into both heaven and hell. Talk about bad luck. So he was cursed to wander the earth for eternity, with nothing but this carved-out turnip to light his way.
A turnip. Wait, so that's where the jack-o'-lantern idea comes from? But I thought we were talking about pumpkins.
We are. So when Irish immigrants brought this tradition with them to America, they realized that pumpkins were, well, a lot bigger and easier to carve than turnips. Plus, they were everywhere.
Ah, that makes sense, but that's just practical, right? I mean, how did switching to pumpkins change how people saw this whole tradition? Did it?
It really did. You see, the original turnip lantern, with Jack's scary face carved into it, it was supposed to scare away evil spirits. But when they started carving pumpkins, which have that bigger grin and more, prominent features, it's almost like they accidentally invited those spirits in.
Wow, that is a serious plot twist. So those friendly pumpkins that we all know, they're actually seen as kind of spooky.
Exactly. And this whole shift from scaring spirits away to maybe attracting them, well, it kind of opened the door for some pretty creepy stories about carved pumpkins. And one of the spookiest has got to be the legend of the pumpkin of Black Hollow in Pennsylvania.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. I love a good local legend. What's so special about this pumpkin of Black Hollow?
Well, it's not just one story. It's a bunch of creepy events, all centered around this, well, supposedly cursed pumpkin. The first story, the one that started it all, goes all the way back to 1903. This family, the Whitakers, they carved a pumpkin with a really weird symbol on it. Didn't really know what they were getting into.
Uh-oh. This is where it gets good. What happened?
Well, that very night, the father of the family, Mr. Whitaker, he just suddenly died in his sleep. And to make things even creepier, the pumpkin, the one they had carved, it was found smashed to pieces on their doorstep the next morning.
Oh, come on, that's creepy. But wait, there's more to the story, right? I mean, this pumpkin of Black Hollow is kind of legendary.
Oh yeah, the story didn't end there. It pops up again in 1978. This time, it was a bunch of teenagers who were, messing around trying to recreate that cursed symbol from the story on their own pumpkin.
Oh, no good can come from that. What happened to those teenagers?
2 of them disappeared that same night, and they were never seen again.
You're kidding. So after all that, do people even still carve pumpkins in this Black Hollow place?
Well, most folks say it's just an urban legend, but you know how these things are. The fact that people are still talking about it, that they still tell these stories, it just goes to show you how much power we give to our beliefs, even if they're about, well, a seemingly innocent carved pumpkin.
That is wild. I mean, the pumpkin of Black Hollow might be a legend, but it really makes you think about why we're so drawn to these stories about curses. Like, what is it about objects or symbols that brings out that primal fear?
It's a question that people have been trying to figure out forever. Like, why do we believe in this stuff? Our brains are just wired to look for patterns. We want explanations, even for things that don't really make sense. And that's where those curses and haunted objects come in. They tap into that deep-seated fear of the unknown.
So you're saying just the act of believing in a curse, it can almost make it real, even if there's like no logic to it.
Exactly. It's like our brains get stuck on an idea and then start looking for anything that backs it up, even if it means ignoring all the evidence that says it's not true. Confirmation bias, it's called.
Oh, confirmation bias. Yeah, I've totally fallen for that before. Like, just the other day, I bought this new shirt, right? And then suddenly I see everyone wearing the same shirt. Like, it's crazy. I know it's just because I'm hyper aware of it now, but still, it's like the universe is trying to tell me something?
See? That's exactly it. Our brains love to find patterns, even when there are none. Now think about that with the cursed pumpkin, right? If you already believe it's cursed, any little thing that goes wrong, a light flickering, a weird noise, you automatically blame it on the pumpkin.
Oh, totally. It's like those creaky stairs in an old house. Instantly you think, ghost.
Exactly. And the thing about these beliefs is that they don't just stay the same, they change and evolve, especially now with the internet. Take, for example, the whole pumpkin challenge thing going around online. It's wild how these old traditions get a modern makeover.
Right. You mentioned that earlier, the pumpkin challenge. What's that all about? Fill us in.
Okay, so imagine this. It's Halloween night, midnight. You're carving a pumpkin. Sounds pretty normal, right? But the whole point of this challenge, the reason people are doing it at midnight, is that they're hoping to attract ghosts.
Wait, so you're telling me that carving it at midnight somehow makes it a magnet for the supernatural?
Well, not exactly. It's not like there's some magical pumpkin ghost connection. It's more about, again, the power of suggestion, the thrill of the unknown.
So people are like purposely trying to summon spirits with their pumpkins. Are they actually saying they're experiencing spooky stuff because of this challenge?
Oh, yeah. You go online, and people are sharing all these stories, lights flickering, weird shadows, even full-on ghost sightings, all because they carved their pumpkins at midnight on Halloween.
Yeah.
Now, who knows how much of it is real and how much is just people getting caught up in the moment? The lines get blurry.
It's like instead of gathering around a campfire to tell scary stories, now we have the entire internet.
Exactly. What used to be a local thing, whispered from person to person, now it spreads like wildfire online. And the more we share these stories, the more real they become in our minds, even if we don't want to admit it.
It's like this weird collective fascination with the unknown, but it also makes you wonder, why do we crave that? Why are we drawn to things that scare us, to traditions that hint at something beyond our understanding? I don't know. It's like we can't help but peek into the darkness, even if it scares us a little bit, right?
I think that's part of what makes us human, this need to explore the unknown, to understand what's beyond our grasp. There's a thrill in it, a sense of excitement, even if it's mixed with a little fear.
It's true. Like watching a scary movie, you're scared, but you can't look away. We get to experience that thrill of the what-ifs without any real danger.
Exactly. It's like a safe way to confront our fears, to play with the idea of things that go bump in the night. Halloween gives us permission to do that, doesn't it? With all the ghosts and ghouls and spooky stories.
And when you think about it, the jack-o'-lantern really is the perfect symbol for all of that, isn't it? Those glowing eyes in the dark, both welcoming and a little bit eerie.
It's a symbol that means so many different things to different people. It's about warding off evil, but also about that lingering fascination with the darkness. And now, with the pumpkin challenge and everything, it's like it represents how technology is changing, how we tell stories, how those stories spread.
It's like the digital age is writing its own chapter in the jack-o'-lantern story.
Exactly. So as we head into Halloween with our pumpkins all carved and ready to go, what's the one thing you want our listeners to keep in mind as they embrace all these traditions?
Great question.
I'd say approach everything with a sense of curiosity and maybe a little bit of respect. Even if a belief seems silly or superstitious, there's usually something deeper behind it, something that tells us about what it means to be human.
It's like a reminder that even in this world of technology and science, there's still room for a little mystery, a little bit of magic.
And maybe by holding on to those things, by keeping these traditions alive, we learn a little something about ourselves along the way.
That's a really great point. So this Halloween, as you're lighting up your jack-o'-lanterns, just remember you're taking part in a tradition that's centuries old, full of folklore, a little bit of fear, and a whole lot of fun. Embrace the spooky season, tell those ghost stories, and hey, you never know, you might just start a new legend of your own. Happy Halloween, everyone!
Happy Halloween. All right, so ready to dig into something perfectly spooky this time of year?
Absolutely. Always up for a good haunting. What have we got?
Well, we're shining a light, literally, on a Halloween staple, the jack-o'-lantern.
Jack-o'-lanterns. Okay, I'm intrigued. Seems pretty surface level, but I'm sure you're about to prove me wrong.
Oh, you know me too well. Trust me, we're going way beyond the pumpkin patch on this one. We're talking about ancient myths, folklore, even a little psychology. All the good spooky stuff.
All right, you've got my attention. Let's get into it. What's the story behind these grinning gourds? I mean, it's just a carved pumpkin, right?
Well, hold on to your hats, because it all starts with a guy named Stingy Jack. And no, he wasn't known for giving out the best candy.
Stingy Jack. Okay, so this is an actual legend.
Oh yeah, we're talking Ireland, centuries ago. And this Stingy Jack, well, he was a bit of a trickster. Legend has it, he managed to trick the devil, not once, but twice.
Now that's asking for trouble. You don't just outsmart the devil and walk away unscathed.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting. So Jack, he lives his life, plays his tricks, but eventually, everyone's number gets called.
Let me guess. Things didn't go so well for old Jack in the afterlife.
You got it. Heaven wasn't exactly thrilled about letting him in, given his, shall we say, mischievous past. And, well, the devil. The devil wasn't too keen on having him either, remember? Jack had tricked him.
Oh, right, double whammy. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, or should I say heaven and hell. What happened?
So the devil, true to his word, denies Jack entry, but feeling, I guess, a tiny bit bad, gives him a single burning coal to light his way as he's forced to wander for eternity.
Talk about a raw deal. So that burning coal, that's our first jack-o'-lantern.
Not quite yet. See, Jack, ever resourceful, pops that burning coal into a carved-out turnip.
A turnip? Okay, now we're really going old school.
Exactly. And he used it as a lantern to light his way. And boom, the first jack-o'-lantern was born. At least according to Irish folklore, anyway.
Wow, from tricking the devil to eternal nightlight. That's quite the story.
Right. And it makes you think about how long we've been telling these kinds of stories about the afterlife, about good and evil. I mean, it's fascinating.
It is, and think about it. This is way before electricity, so a flickering light in the darkness, especially one with a good spooky story, I can see how that would really capture people's imaginations.
Speaking of capturing imaginations, you mentioned turnips. Now, I know we use pumpkins today.
Yeah.
When did that happen? Was there some big pumpkin convention where they made the switch?
Huh. Nothing quite so dramatic. You have to remember all those Irish immigrants who journeyed to America. They brought their traditions with them, of course, but turnips weren't exactly easy to come by here.
Makes sense. Pumpkins are everywhere, especially this time of year.
Exactly. And guess what? They're native to North America, so they were already here. Easier to find, way easier to carve. It was a no-brainer, really.
It's like a classic example of how traditions can change and adapt as they cross borders and time. It makes you wonder, were jack-o'-lanterns always just decorations? Or was there more to it back in the day?
Oh, no. To understand that, we've got to go back to Samhain. That's ancient Celtic festival, way back when. This time of year was serious business. The veil between the living and the dead, it was thought to be paper thin.
Right, right. Bonfires, costumes, the whole shebang. It was all about scaring away spirits, wasn't it?
Exactly. And these carved out turnips, with their eerie glow, they fit right into that. They were seen as protection against malevolent spirits, even guides for those lost souls wandering in the darkness.
So less happy Halloween and more stay-away spirits.
You got it.
Right.
Even the carving itself, it wasn't just for looks. It was about facing those fears head on, giving a face to the unknown, maybe even gaining a little control over it.
It's funny, though. We've gone from warding off evil spirits to setting jack-o'-lanterns out for the neighborhood kids. But there's still something a little, I don't know, unsettling about them, right? You don't think that primal fear is still there somewhere deep down?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just history, it's psychology. Think about it. The jack-o'-lantern, it's a face, often kind of a creepy one, emerging from the darkness. It's tapping into something primal, that fear of what we can't see.
And for our ancestors, the dark wasn't just, an inconvenience. It was downright dangerous.
Exactly. Predators, who knows what else. That fear, it's kind of hardwired into us. And that light inside the jack-o'-lantern, it becomes a symbol of, well, safety. It's a little beacon of hope, a way to hold back the darkness, even if just for a little while.
So we've gone from keeping evil spirits away to, I don't know, facing our fears head on. It's a little deeper than I initially thought.
Yeah, I think so. The jack-o'-lantern, it's become this evolving symbol of our anxieties, and it makes you wonder, what does it say about us that we're still so drawn to them?
It's a good question. And speaking of being drawn to things that go bump in the night, you got to talk about how often jack-o'-lanterns pop up in horror stories and spooky movies.
Yeah. Oh, it's like their visual shorthand for something wicked this way comes, right? And there's that old superstition. You know the one, if your jack-o'-lantern goes out before dawn.
Ooh, yeah, bad things are headed your way. It's like the light goes out and boom, you're vulnerable. It's funny how these old beliefs stick around.
It's true. We can't forget that story from the source material, the one about the family in Massachusetts.
Oh, right. The one where their jack-o'-lantern went out and then...
They see this shadowy figure right where the light had been just moments before. Creepy stuff. Now, whether it was just their imaginations, a trick of the light, or something truly unexplainable, well, I'll let you decide.
Okay, that image alone is enough to send shivers down your spine. And, speaking of images, jack-o'-lanterns, they really are everywhere, aren't they? I feel like every Halloween movie I've ever seen has had at least one lurking in the background.
Oh, absolutely. It's like they're the universal sign for spooky stuff ahead, And it's not just horror either. I mean, think about it. Even in comedies, cartoons, they just scream Halloween, right?
Totally. Even without the scary backstory, they just have this vibe, like a visual shorthand for the whole season.
Exactly. It's like tapping into something we all share, some collective memory or feeling. But I do love seeing how creative people get with them.
Oh, tell me about it. I
Yeah.
saw one the other day that looked like a dragon. It was incredible. So much detail.
Right. It's amazing what people can do with a pumpkin and a little imagination. Speaking of imagination, we've covered a lot of ground here. From ancient rituals to, well, the psychology of a good scare. What's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this deep dive? What should they think about the next time they light that jack-o'-lantern?
Ooh, good question.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's just realizing how much meaning is packed into something as simple as a carved pumpkin.
Right. It seems so straightforward, but when you dig a little deeper, you've got history, folklore, this whole dance with fear and hope, all tangled up in this one flickering light.
It's like holding a tiny piece of, I don't know, something bigger than all of us in the palm of your hand.
Exactly. So yeah, next time you light up your jack-o'-lantern, take a second, really look at it. Think about the journey it represents, from ancient beliefs to spooky stories, right to your doorstep.
It gives a whole new meaning to Happy Halloween, doesn't it?
It really does.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our jack-o'-lantern journey. At least for now.
Always more to uncover.
That's the beauty of a good deep dive, right?
Hey!
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us as we explored the jack-o'-lantern. Hope you learned a thing or two, and hey, maybe you'll even see them in a whole new light this Halloween. Until next time, keep those lanterns lit and those minds curious.
All right, so get ready, because tonight we're diving deep into some Halloween vibes, and let me tell you, it's going to be a wild ride. We're talking about the Pumpkin King.
Yeah, the Pumpkin King. We're going to figure out what this guy's all about, what he represents, and why we're still telling stories about him like centuries later.
And believe me, by the time we're done with this deep dive, you'll be practically an expert. You'll
Fine.
know more Pumpkin King lore than you ever thought possible.
Oh yeah, we're going way beyond those, those basic Halloween stories you hear every year. This is about like peeling back the layers, man. History, folklore, maybe even a little psychology, all to understand why this figure is still so fascinating.
Exactly. So we've got this script, right? And it lays out the whole legend of the Pumpkin King. It reads like a classic campfire story. But what's really interesting is how it ties the Pumpkin King to these really old traditions.
Right, like think about Samhain.
Samhain.
Yeah, it was this Celtic festival, and they believe that's when the veil between the living and the dead was like super thin.
Oh, spook.
Yeah, and think about it. Bonfires,
Yeah.
costumes, carved turnips. It's all there, man.
Yeah.
Like the ancient blueprint for our modern Halloween.
Wow, it's true. You can totally see how jack-o'-lanterns evolved from that.
Right. But this script, it takes it even further. It gives the Pumpkin King an origin story.
Oh, so he wasn't always like this spooky figure.
Nope. According to this, he was once a druid, a leader. But he was performing this big Samhain ritual, and well, it went really wrong.
Ooh, like what happened?
The script doesn't go into detail, but it makes it sound pretty bad, like maybe he messed with forces he didn't understand.
And that's how he became the Pumpkin King.
That's the idea. It's
Yeah.
like he got cursed, eternally bound to guard the very veil he was messing with, forever known as the Pumpkin King.
Whoa, that's intense.
It is. But here's the thing. Did any of that actually happen? Was there a real person behind this legend?
Good question. What do you think?
Honestly, I don't know. And the script leaves it open to interpretation, which I kind of like. It lets your imagination run wild.
True, true. Okay, so we've got this ancient origin story, but then the script jumps right into modern-day encounters with the Pumpkin King. It claims people are still seeing him, especially around Halloween.
And these aren't just like vague rumors. These are accounts with like really specific details. Flickering pumpkin lights, rustling leaves,
Don't leave me hanging.
and a shadowy figure with a glowing head.
Okay, now that's just creepy.
There's this one account, super chilling. Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, back in 1963. Group of teenagers, Halloween night. They decide to go to the cemetery on a dare.
Oh no, you know that's not going to end well.
Right. So they're in the cemetery, and one by one, they're carved pumpkins. They just go out, plunges them into darkness. And then the last teen leaving the cemetery, he swears he saw him. A shadowy figure with a pumpkin for a head, just standing there by a tomb.
That's creepy. And in Sleepy Hollow, of all places, come on, that town already has the Headless Horseman. Now this,
It makes you wonder, right? Like, is there something about that place, some Halloween vortex?
maybe? It's like a magnet for spooky stuff.
Right. And it always seems to be connected to Halloween, doesn't it? It's like the Pumpkin King. He's tied to this time of year somehow, feeds off the energy, the fear.
Maybe he's like the embodiment of all our Halloween anxieties. He
Yeah.
comes out when the veil is thinnest and things go bump in the night.
Maybe. Or maybe it's something else entirely.
It's not just about him hiding in cemeteries or popping up to scare teenagers, though,
Hmm.
right? This script says the Pumpkin King's influence, it's like everywhere during Halloween.
Oh, totally. I mean, close your eyes for a sec. Picture Halloween. What do you see?
Okay, so pumpkins, obviously.
Yeah.
Costumes, decorations, that like spooky but fun vibe.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And right there, in the middle of it all, usually literally, that grinning jack-o'-lantern, the Pumpkin King, he's like the unofficial mascot of Halloween, even if most people don't realize it.
But why the pumpkin? It's not scary on its own. It's just, a big orange thing.
And that's where it gets really interesting. This script, it digs into the whole symbolism of the pumpkin, goes all the way back to those ancient Celtic traditions again.
Oh, right, like those carved turnips you were talking about.
Exactly. See, those weren't just for decoration. They were supposed to ward off evil spirits, protect people during Samhain.
So, like, the pumpkins we carve now for jack-o'-lanterns and stuff, they're descended from, what, ancient security systems. That's kind of cool.
Right. And then, as Halloween changed from that pagan festival into, the more modern holiday, the pumpkin's role changed too. Went from being this serious ward to, like, a symbol of celebration. Harvest, a bit of mischief.
And the Pumpkin King got swept up in all that.
Seems like it. He went from cursed figure to, what, like a Halloween icon. Represents both the spooky and the fun parts.
Huh. So it's not just the pumpkin itself, it's what people do with it.
Exactly. This script, it even says that carving a jack-o'-lantern, lighting it up from the inside, it's like its own ritual.
Now that you mention it, yeah.
Yeah.
People spend, like, hours picking the perfect pumpkin and carving it just right, then putting a candle in. It's like they're bringing it to life, in a way.
See, maybe that's us tapping into something ancient, something we've been doing for centuries without realizing it.
And this whole thing with the Pumpkin King, how he went from this scary story to, like, being connected to jack-o'-lanterns. It's like we made peace with the darkness for one night.
Fascinating, right? It shows how these stories evolve, how even something that starts out scary can become something else entirely. And that actually brings up another point this script makes, how the whole Pumpkin King story itself has changed over time.
Oh, yeah. How'd it go from campfire tale to, like, full-blown Halloween icon?
It all comes down to good old-fashioned storytelling. Imagine, someone tells a spooky story about the Pumpkin King around a campfire, right?
Okay, I'm picturing it. Spooky campfire, someone's telling a ghost story.
And then someone else hears that story, and they tell it to someone else, adding their own details, changing things a bit.
Like a game of Halloween telephone.
Exactly. And over time, you have all these different versions of the story, all these different interpretations of who the Pumpkin King is and what he represents.
Which explains why there's so many different Pumpkin King stories out there. Like, some people say he's this menacing figure who hangs out in cemeteries, and other people say he's more of a mischievous trickster.
Right. But according to this script, the evolution of the Pumpkin King story didn't stop there. As Halloween got more and more popular in the 19th century, he started appearing in literature, poems, even early horror stories.
Huh. You're right. There are tons of books and movies that use jack-o'-lanterns or the Pumpkin King to give you that spooky Halloween feeling.
Exactly. But the really interesting thing is how the internet has changed things. Think about it. Fan art, creepypastas, those crazy, elaborate pumpkin carvings people post online.
Oh yeah, the Pumpkin King's like gone viral. He's everywhere online during Halloween.
And that's kind of the point this script is making. The internet has made it possible for the Pumpkin King story to evolve faster than ever before. He's gone from local legend to global phenomenon, all thanks to shared stories and, some pretty impressive pumpkin carving skills.
It's like everyone who celebrates Halloween is adding to the Pumpkin King story without even meaning to. Like every spooky meme, every awesome jack-o'-lantern design, it all adds another layer to this story that never really ends.
Yeah, and all that, the fact that so many people are drawn to the Pumpkin King, it's what makes him so interesting. Don't
Yeah.
you think? He's like this blank slate that we can use to explore our fears, our own ideas about Halloween, even our own mortality.
So you're saying when we carve those creaky faces into pumpkins, maybe we're connecting with those really old fears, the same ones that people felt way back during Samhain.
It's kind of a mind-blowing idea, right? I mean, the script doesn't say for sure, but it makes you wonder, are we part of something much bigger when we're picking out pumpkins, even if it's just for a fun Instagram pic?
So this Halloween, when you see a house all decked out for the holiday, or like a really cool jack-o'-lantern someone made, it might be more than just decorations.
Right. It could be this echo of centuries of stories, traditions, and how people have always felt about the unknown. This whole deep dive, it's shown us that the Pumpkin King is more than just a spooky story or a Halloween decoration. He represents something bigger, something we're still trying to figure out.
He's like the feeling you get when you tell a ghost story. That shiver down your spine when you think, maybe, just maybe, there are things out there we don't understand.
And the best part is, we still don't know all the answers. That's what makes it so fun to explore, to keep digging for more.
Exactly. So as the nights get longer and you start to feel that Halloween chill in the air, remember the Pumpkin King? Remember that the line between what's real and what we imagine can get kind of blurry. And sometimes the things that scare us are the same things that fascinate us.
And hey, who knows? Maybe this Halloween, if you're really paying attention, you might just hear the wind rustling the leaves or see a flicker of light that makes you think of the Pumpkin King.
Until then, happy Halloween, everybody. And remember, sometimes the coolest things you'll ever learn are just a deep dive away.
All right, everyone, get ready. We're diving into some spooky stuff today. We're talking about the Holojack. We've got a podcast script here, and it really dives into this whole legend and lore.
Yeah, this script, it really grabbed my attention right away. Because it takes something we all know, like a jack-o'-lantern, right? And it brings it to life. And it connects it back to that old Irish tale of Stingy Jack.
Oh, man, Stingy Jack.
Yeah.
Classic. But you know what's really interesting about this is it really shows you how much this fear of the supernatural is like hidden in plain sight in these traditions.
Oh, yeah. It's like we're hiding these spooky stories right out in the open.
Exactly.
And the script does such a good job, I think, of reminding us about Stingy Jack and how he tricked the devil.
Oh, man, what a power move, right?
Yeah, tricked the devil and then gets cursed to wander the earth forever with only this hollowed-out turnip to light his way.
Okay, so we all know the story.
Yeah.
But how do we get from this turnip to the pumpkin that we're carving today?
Well, and that's where things get really interesting. The creators of this podcast, they point out that when Irish immigrants came to America, pumpkins, they were just more plentiful than turnips. So it made them the perfect thing to carve.
Oh, wow. So the tradition we know today, it's got like a whole different meaning now.
Yeah, it feels a little less innocent now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely giving me chills. Look at my jack-o'-lantern a little differently now. And you know what else is kind of creepy about all this?
What's that?
This script that talks about, like, actual real-life encounters with the Holojack.
Oh, yeah, it gets real.
Not just like spooky stories, but people claim they've seen jack-o'-lanterns moving, glowing with no light inside.
Right, and it makes you wonder...
Are people really seeing this stuff?
Well, it makes these sightings a little more interesting than your typical ghost story.
What's that?
It's the details. Like, they get really specific.
Okay, give me an example.
So the script, it talks about this one incident in Maine, back in 1998, group of people hiking at night, and they see this glowing jack-o'-lantern just following them through the woods.
Oh.
And there's no candle inside, no light source at all.
That's creepy.
Right. And then there's another one from Scotland. This carved pumpkin. It was seen moving around a house.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like actually moving from room to room.
A moving pumpkin.
And it vanishes.
Okay, that's, I don't know, part of me wants to say it's just people getting freaked out, especially around Halloween.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Those details, they make you think twice.
They do, and the script goes even further. It connects these sightings to Halloween night itself. Like Halloween night might actually amplify paranormal activity.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like Halloween's got a spooky power boost.
Yeah, you could say that.
Interesting.
The script mentions this thin veil between our world and the spirit world, specifically on Halloween.
Oh, wow. So like all the spirits are coming to party.
Something like that. And it's not just the Holojack.
Right.
We've got ghosts, spirits, all sorts of creatures.
So we're decorating our houses, dressing up in costumes. We're basically inviting them in.
Well, that's what the script suggests.
Oh, no.
Maybe carving jack-o'-lanterns. It's not about warding off evil spirits.
No.
It could be the opposite, like we're beckoning them closer.
So instead of go away, it's come on in.
Maybe.
That is both terrifying and kind of hilarious.
Right.
Especially if you've ever spent time carving the perfect pumpkin.
Right.
Like, welcome.
It makes you wonder if the face we carve actually matters.
Like maybe it's some kind of psychological thing.
Yeah, maybe it all means something.
Interesting. So we're carving these faces, right? And maybe, just maybe, we're inviting something in that's all a little creepy. But is it real? Is the Holojack actually a thing?
That's the big question, right? And the script doesn't really give a straight answer. It's more like it could be real, it could be a story, maybe it's both.
Kind of like our imaginations make it real.
Yeah, exactly. The more we tell the stories, the more we're afraid. It's like we give it power.
And, thinking about those stories, it makes you think about what we're really afraid of, like as a whole society, not just individually.
Absolutely. The holojack, it's like a warning, right? Be careful what you create, be careful what you invite. Because sometimes those creations, they show us things about ourselves that we don't expect.
Yes, that's a pretty spooky thought to end on.
Yeah.
So everyone listening, think about this. If you had to carve a jack-o'-lantern tonight, knowing it might actually attract the hollow jack, what would you carve? What would that say about you? Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, and until next time, try to sleep with the lights on.